Okay. Hello and good evening, everyone. And thank you for everyone who's watching us live right now or will be joining us shortly. My name is Nitisha Gilra, and I am one of the youth program. I'm one of the members of the youth program team, and today we are here to talk all about happiness on International Day of Happiness. So before we get into talking a little bit more, I did a little bit of background search on how this day came all about. And actually, this day, it's a UN day, which was proclaimed in 2012 by, at the request of Bhutan, which monitors the happiness index of the world. And another fun fact is Bhutan is the happiest country in the world. So on this day, when UN was asked, like, why this day, they said this day is all about happiness. It's a way to recognize the importance of happiness in the lives of people around the world. So as we started to work a little bit on this event, try to engage some youth to see how they are, what their perception of happiness is, we found out, we did a survey to some youth between the age of 10 to 17, and we found out that 95% of them believe that happiness can be cultivated. And I think that was our biggest takeaway from the survey, that it's something that you can build in yourself. So we are here to do that exactly, talk about happiness. How do you cultivate happiness and how do you sustain it? And this is going to be more geared towards youth. And to answer all these amazing questions, we have an esteemed panel members here who've joined us, and I'll do the honor to introduce each of them. I'm going to start with Dr. Joy Himmel. Dr. Joy Himmel has 30 years of experience in providing mental health services in community, hospital-based, and college health settings. She currently serves as a director of the Office of Counseling Services at Old Dominion University in Virginia. She has focused on establishing integrated model of care, improving access to mental health care, and providing a trauma-informed approach to wellness. Wow, thank you, Dr. Joy, for joining us today. We truly
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time. And next we have Professor Ronnie Newman. And Professor Ronnie Newman is an award-winning Howard University trained researcher and a published author in the field of mind-body medicine and psychological thriving. She has spoken internationally on this topic to organizations like the United Nations and the World Bank, and here in the United States has been invited to present to the National Institute of Mental Health and the Food and Drug Administration special session on youth mental health. She is also the founding director of IHV's research committee. So thank you, Professor Ronnie. We appreciate your presence here today. So thank you so much.
My
And
pleasure.
And finally, we have Mr. Harry Monga, and he has been working with Sky programs for the past 12 years in Sky schools and has recently moved to the Sky campus, where he focuses on social emotional learning through the Sky programs. He's driven by the mission on active youth empowerment, creating reform within our education system at a grassroots level, and a service leadership mindset. So, welcome, Harry. And finally, we have someone very, very special here today who is actually going to be interviewing all these panelists. So we have a Sky program teen graduate, Pritika Kakrawal, who's a sophomore in Plano, Texas, and who has taken the initiative to be an advocate and youth leader for mental health among teens in her community and schools. And she's actually the one who reached out to us to put this event together. So welcome, Pritika, and very grateful that you are here representing the youth, asking the questions, and I think this is going to be an amazing session. We've never done a session where a teen is leading, so we are super excited for that. So before I hand this over to you, Pritika, I do have a question for you. So tell me, what inspires you to be a mentor and an advocate for youth mental health, And more importantly, why is it important for us to talk about happiness?
Hello, everyone. I'm Pratika Karkwal, a current sophomore from Plano, Texas. I study in Lebanon Trail High School, Frisco, Texas, and I'm very excited to be here in today's panel as a youth mental health advocate. I advocate mental health for youth because it's such an important topic to be addressed. In recent years, we've been facing a huge challenge of information overload. We tend to believe that information is knowledge as youth, when it's really not. In addition to schoolworks and projects, today's youth face countless challenges from the infinite loop of social media feeds. That's like an artificial universe of its own. The side effects are physiological arousal, mental health issues, and stress. I'm taking AP psychology in class 2, and I observed that peer competition in students to beat the person next to us because everyone considers as youth, life is a race. Rather than focusing on ourselves, we look around, get overwhelmed, and feel stressed. And according to the CDC, one of the leading causes of adolescent death is suicide. And ongoing technological improvement and growth in artificial intelligence will positively benefit society for sure, but will negatively influence many youth as well. So I believe positive coping mechanisms are very important for us. And for that, awareness is key. So for me, last week, I had a state business competition for the DECA organization. And on the spot, we had 10 minutes to understand a business case and give a presentation. It was a competitive event at the state level, and so I felt very nervous. I did my sky breathing practices in the morning to feel calm and focused, and that was very helpful and made a big difference in my performance. I was able to perform well and qualify for the international level in the entrepreneurship category, and only so after doing breathing practices that would help me. Next, about mentoring, I've worked with a Step Up organization for girls empowerment. And to start with, I performed corporate sessions and attended them. And then I was not only able to contribute, but also become a mentor for other girls across the nation because I had preserved and enhanced my physical and mental energy levels. Somehow, I really felt like my mental health awareness and daily sky breathing, yoga practices, and lifestyle tremendously helped my mentoring efforts as well. Through these good practices, I was able to channel my energy in positive tasks such as mentoring and advocacy. And as we grow older, our workload continues to increase as responsibilities go up. And as youth, life gives us two paths for happiness. One path is shortcut, but unfortunately short-lived. And that is the path of drugs. Today, unfortunately, many high schoolers tend to incline towards that shortcut. Another true happiness is the path of yoga, meditation, and mindfulness that is sustainable and sets us as youth up for success in the future. And that's where the role of parents, schools, and society is very important to show the right path to youth. Now, coming back to the event, happiness is the foundation for a positive life ahead. According to a study I read, we get tens and thousands of thoughts per day. 95% of those are repetitive, and around 80% are very negative. I don't know the actual figure. I would let the experts discuss the facts. But the bottom line is we need to channelize our conscious thoughts to really be positive. We as youth must find ways to be happy. And that's what today, the UN International Day of Happiness is all about. In today's panel, we'll dive deeper with our experts into how we can cultivate and sustain happiness, which I'm really looking forward to. So the first question is to Dr. Joy. How happy or unhappy are youth these days? And what have you seen that helps to increase levels of happiness and overall well-being?
Yeah, so great question and great response from you. I'm not sure I have a whole lot to add after what you've already disclosed. So thank you for that. I think certainly today's youth are struggling in a lot of different ways. Probably most familiar with the young adult population, 18 to 21, but I think what we see in terms of high school students coming to the college setting is that there have been some grave impacts related to the 3 years of pandemic, which has really altered, I think, a lot of just a sense of meaning and connectedness and belonging, which are so crucial to this issue of happiness. We see a lot of young people who really did just inundate themselves in things like social media with long hours online and screen time and just a lot of isolation that may not have occurred actually, if the pandemic would not have happened. And then the whole teaching paradigm changed as well. And so all those lost opportunities, lost experiences related to education, being with friends, that has had an impact, I think. Statistically, we know that, students are struggling with more depression and anxiety than what they had previously experienced. And certainly on a college campus, we're seeing that with very high levels and prevalence rates of depression and suicide ideation. So there has been an impact. So this topic is just so important because in addition to happiness, we're talking too about well-being. There are two different things, but they are related. And there's certainly a lot of overlap between having components of a lifestyle that embraces wellness and also having a mentality or a mindset that embraces the choice for happiness. And I think the key there is choice, that we have a choice to look at things in a variety of ways. When events happen, there's that space there between the event and our reaction and our interpretation of that event. And that is crucial in terms of making a choice related to thoughts, interpretations, beliefs that are adaptive and productive, and those that are more self-critical, demeaning, or negative. So that is so crucial, I think, in terms of just this concept of what is happiness, how do you attain it? I think some of the overlapping components related to wellness, and here I'm talking about body, mind, and spirit, but wellness in terms of taking care of self, really embracing things that we associate with compassion. So what I see often in a counseling venue is that individuals are fairly good at being compassionate towards others, but often not so good at being compassionate towards self. And sometimes it's just that has not been embraced or learned or reinforced. And often I think, as humans, we get into this, kind of people pleasing kind of thing and always kind of looking out for appearances and what other people are thinking or judging or evaluating, when we really need to pay attention to the core of ourselves, the authentic self, and be able to embrace that. Be able to love that and cherish that and provide compassion for that self and that entity there related to that. The other thing I think that is just crucially important is embracing things like, and this seems like a simple concept, but it really isn't simple on a day-to-day basis, and that's gratitude. I mean, so often we have the choice to look at things, as I said, in a variety of ways, but making the choice to really focus on what we're grateful for, what we have versus what we don't have, what we value versus the things that are perhaps out of our reach, and probably even more importantly, really looking at what we can control and what we can't control. And I'm thinking here about the Serenity Prayer, which I know probably a lot of people are very familiar with, but being able to embrace what we can control and being able to let go of all of those things in our life and environment that we can't control. So those things are vitally important. I think another thing, just to piggyback on those things, is the need for connectedness. We're social beings. And I think it's in our DNA to really want to reach out to others, embrace others, be around others, get the energy from others. And when you think about what we've gone through with the pandemic, with so much being virtual, Zoom, what you lose in that is just that physical energy of being in the room with another human being, being into that connection with others. And I think more than anything, that has been kind of a driving force in terms of what has caused a lot of negative mood states, just really that lack of connection with others. So those are some of the things that I think are extremely important in terms of how to strive for happiness, how to be on that journey, how to stay on that journey, and why it matters. The other probably last thought I have is that I think it's so important to have meaning in your life. So finding the passion, it doesn't matter what age you are, if you're 12 or you're 18 or you're 86, really kind of finding the passion in life is the important ingredient. And then finding purpose and meaning in that, so that every day there's a purpose as to why you get up, why you interact with others, why you reach out to others. And it gives you that sense of belonging, which I think is crucial when we look at this topic.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that was really well said. I think one of the biggest takeaway or theme, I think, was how you talked about happiness being a choice. Because as youth, oftentimes we think of like all the things we can't control, but what you said about just letting go of those things and choosing to focus on our passions and what we're grateful for, I think, and our compassion and for not only others, but also for ourselves and self-care. I think that's really a big takeaway that we can implement as youth. And really anyone into our day-to-day lives. So Professor Newman, you have said that modern science has discovered concrete steps we can take to boost our level of happiness, and that can easily be implemented. What are those steps to increasing our happiness?
Okay, that is a great question. And to preface it, I would like to simply add that modern science has discovered, for the first time in history, we know that happiness is more than just a pleasant emotional experience, but happiness actually has a distinct physiological state, distinct physiological characteristics. In fact, if any one of us here who are on this session were in a laboratory right now, the scientists, without even being in the same room with us and not even seeing us, they would be able to tell how happy we are simply by looking at our brainwave patterns, our heart rhythms, and our body chemistry. And what's exciting about that, this new understanding, is that it also shows us that if we can change our physiological state, if we can impact our physiology, if we can hack into our physiology, then we can change our emotional state. And so what I'd like to do with my little bit of time here is to share things that we can start doing today, biohacks into our physiology that can dramatically increase our ability to live a happier life. And all of them piggyback on what Dr. Himmel was talking about in terms of self-care, because all of these biohacks are a form of self-care. And one of the biohacks that really surprises a lot of people is that you can increase your level of happiness by feeding your gut biome what your gut biome needs to flourish. Now, our gut biome is simply literally trillions of bacteria and other microbes living in our gut, living in our intestines. In fact, there are more microbes in our gut than there are cells in our entire body. There are roughly 40 trillion microbes and only 30 trillion cells. And you'd probably be surprised, like me, to learn that the majority of the happiness hormones that our brains need for us to experience happiness are not produced in our brain, but they're produced by these microbes. In fact, 90% of the happiness hormone serotonin and 50% of dopamine are produced by our beneficial microbes. And so we want to ensure that they have the right environment in which they can blossom and thrive, because they are key to our happiness. And roughly there's three kinds of microbes. There's beneficial microbes, there's neutral ones, and then there's harmful ones. And some foods cause the growth of beneficial bacteria, which is phenomenal. Gets our dopamine, our serotonin up, we're happy campers. However, there are other foods that rapidly cause the growth of the harmful bacteria, and they can overrun the beneficial bacteria and impede the production of our well-being hormones. So very quickly, self-care, what do we want to eat? Well, a diverse range of foods. The beneficial microbes need high fiber to flourish and to function well. So research shows that it's ideal to favor a high fiber, plant-based diet as much as possible. And in particular, that means legumes and beans, and of course, fruits and veggies and whole grains, because these all contain lots of fiber and can promote the growth of the beneficial bacteria. Now, what's super important as well is not to provide fertilizer for the harmful bacteria, because we don't want them overtaking the beneficial ones. So what do the harmful bacteria feed upon? Well, the same things that your mother tells you harms you. Basically, simple sugars, highly processed foods, fried foods, things that convert quickly into sugar, like white bread and pasta and candy and pastries, and of course, white sugar. And on that, though, if you're saying, okay, I'm just gonna, I'll stop doing that. I'll use aspartame, I'll use Splenda or, Equal or something like that. However, you want to limit your intake of artificial sweeteners, because research has shown that artificial sweeteners like aspartame stimulate the growth of the unhealthy bacteria. And but just so you know, there are natural alternatives, so you can still enjoy delicious sweet treats like I love. And you can use things like monk fruit or stevia or coconut palm sugar. So that's one biohack, is protecting our gut biome. Now, the second happiness biohack is produced simply by exercise. When we exercise, there are a lot of chemicals and hormones that are created in the body. And one of the very important ones that dramatically influences our level of happiness is a protein called BDNF. And I joke that it's my favorite protein, and it stands for brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And you can increase your production of BDNF significantly within hours of exercising. There have been many studies that have measured BDNF in your circulation after just one session of aerobic activity, and it's sky high. And why this is important is because one of the functions of BDNF is to help the happiness hormones exert a stronger effect, which is the exact same happiness hormones that antidepressant medication targets. And exercise is so effective at this that the American Psychiatric Association has declared exercise to be a standalone or adjunct treatment for depression, and similar results have also been found for anxiety. So is it any wonder that people sometimes feel a boost after exercise, and you hear people talking about the runner's high? Now, just one thing we know, if you're committed to including in self-care exercise, we know one thing for sure about human nature, and that is that people won't continue to do things they don't like. So if you don't like lifting weights in the gym, try dance or bicycling or go for a run with a friend, and aim for 1 hour a day. Okay. Now, the third biohack also may be the easiest to implement, because that is simply anywhere you are with no change in diet, using your breath to quiet the stress response and create the experience of well-being and happiness. You see, every emotion that we have creates a specific rhythm in our breathing. Like if somebody startles you, what happens to your breath? Right? And if you've seen somebody who's really anxious, their breath is, it's short and shallow, right? And when you feel calm and chillaxed, how's your breath? It's like, it's slow and long, and the inhale and the exhalation are even. And so just looking at our own experience, we see this, and science has actually discovered that this is a two-way street, that not only do our emotions change our breath, but if we breathe in specific patterns, we can literally change our emotional state. So rather than just sitting around moping, we can actually, with doing some breathing, we can begin to transform our emotional state. Now, we can think of that as like two legs of a table, the breath and the emotions, but there's a third leg of that table as well, which is linked to the power of the breath to promote happiness. And that is that our emotions are not just in our head, we now know that our emotions are everywhere in our body, and they're transmitted there almost instantaneously by chemical messengers. And broadly speaking, positive emotions, happiness, enthusiasm, joy, produce chemical messengers that support happiness, that increase the experience of happiness. So it's like a self-increasing circle. And in contrast, negative emotions, fear, anger, sadness, produce chemical messengers that are associated with stress, anxiety, and more fear. And all three of these legs, you think of a three-legged table, our breath, our emotions, and our body chemistry are all connected. And if you influence any one of them, you influence the other two. And just like if you pull one leg of a table, the whole table goes. You don't have to pull all three legs, one is enough. And because of this, our breathing becomes a powerful window, a powerful biohack into our entire system. And rather than allowing unwelcome emotions to change our breathing and cause the release of chemical messengers that keep us in that unwelcome, uncomfortable emotional state, through skillful use of the breath, we can transform our emotional state and cause a cascade of chemical messengers that boost happiness and well-being, which is pretty cool, huh? And research has verified this. You don't have to take my word for it. For example, even just taking a few slow, deep breaths can start to calm you down. And the standardized Sky Breath program that Harry is going to talk about in a few minutes has been shown to reduce the stress hormone cortisol from the very first sessions. Not taking months to master, but from the very first session. And similarly, research has shown that the heart rhythms that are indicative of happiness, something called heart rate variability, also improves with Sky practice. So to wrap it all up, next time your happiness gets overshadowed by stress, take a few deep breaths. It's a step for self-care in the right direction. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for that. I think one of the most important things that you said is that, happiness is not just an experience, but it's a state. And we can really we can choose to do that. We don't have to look around and, go do a program or, get antidepressant medication. It's something that you can focus on yourself. You can breathe, you can exercise, you can focus on your diet. And I think that's very important for youth, because sometimes we think happiness is like a complicated thing to achieve. But I really do think sky breathing and yoga, meditation do come a long way. For Mr. Harry, a question is, you've been teaching youth all across the country from diverse backgrounds. How do you encourage youth to cultivate the habit of being happy? And what tools and resources are available for youth to sustain happiness?
Ritika, I'm going to ask you to ask that question once again, but because just to remind everybody of the question, but I'm very grateful to be a part of this group with Dr. Joy Himmel and Ronnie Newman, and especially yourself, who is a young person taking initiative at a much needed time. I mean, it's never too late. It's never too late for an initiative like this. And to see the amount of enthusiasm that's springing from your very being, it's so beautiful to see that you're just your mind and everything is just devoted to helping people, helping young people, peers, especially that might be in a similar situation, that might be experiencing stressors. And so if you can repeat that question once again for the audience to hear, maybe we can.
Yes. So you've been teaching youth all across the country from diverse backgrounds. How do you encourage youth to cultivate the habit of being happy? And what tools and resources are available for youth to sustain that happiness?
I would say, first of all, just asking this question, you're simply moving in the direction of finding a solution, right? If more people ask this question, because what am I doing by asking question, by asking for help? I was told this by my mentor very long ago when I first was introduced to the Sky programs and when I first started facilitating. And he said, successful people ask for help. Yeah. And so, that has stuck with me for a very long time. That if I want to be successful, if there's a place, there's nothing wrong with me asking for help. That's what it told me. That I'm on the, like, I'm in a place to learn. There's such a integrity in asking for help. There's such a strength in asking for help. And at this time when depression is at epidemic levels, right? Ridiculous. Simply asking for help could be one avenue, right? More people, and that this is, and I'm assuming, I'll maybe run it by the doctors here and Professor Newman, but there's a section of our society that is undiagnosed, right? And so if more people were to ask for help, I think there's so many more solutions, more comprehensive, more, like this, the Sky program is a very well designed program. It's not the only thing that can support people. It's a very comprehensive curriculum designed to support people at every age level, right? And so I would say, in order for us to cultivate it and to build it with, amongst the youth, I think it starts with the individual. If I want to build it, I have to live it, first of all, right? If I can't live being happy, then there's no way I can even start to influence anybody else around me, let alone young people. And young people have a PhD in knowing exactly what's happening with you. If I'm not happy and I'm facilitating happiness, or I'm facilitating, being stress-free, they're gonna pick it up just like this. They're gonna pick it up very fast, right? And so, happiness is a habit, right? And the more I hear the science behind it, I can do those actions, and those mental actions and those physical actions, because it creates neural pathways, right? These happiness habits become ingrained, right, in my brain. It's just like learning how to brush my teeth. Maybe for a while, my parents had to, put the toothbrush in my mouth for a little bit of time, and then I eventually picked it up. So in the same way, the more I tread down this question, what are those things that are going to keep me happy? What are those things that I love to do? And Professor Newman laid it out. She hit it on the head by saying, one is watching my food. The second is watching my physical activity, right? And most of all, if I can work with this breath, right? If I don't have time for food, to watch my food, if I don't have time, just like she said, if I don't have time to take care of my sleeping habits, or watch my physical exercise, okay, I can take a few minutes just to sit and observe my breath, maybe, right? Maybe a few seconds to observe what's happening, just a few seconds of introspection of what's happening with this breath. And, the more I become aware of this, the more it'll bring me into the present moment, the more it'll make me a little more aware of what, especially in the moments of stress, what it's doing to me, what my own breath can bring me. Yeah, it can bring me to the present moment. It can alleviate me of stress if I do choose to learn some breath work practices. And so, you said if there are tools and resources, yeah, there's so many tools and resources. Are you asking for them? Right? Am I asking for it? Am I asking the right questions? Because it is possible. It is possible to be happy and stay happy, right? We don't realize that there's a section of our society that knows very well how to sustain and knows how to manage stress in very effective ways, right? So there's a section of our society that knows right? There are people that I know that know how to manage stress very well, right? I know Dr. Joy Himmel, and I know Professor Ronnie Newman definitely know how to manage their stress, right? You could see the enthusiasm, you could see the life of which they speak. They know exactly what they're talking about, right? So I would like to direct a question towards Professor Newman and then Dr. Joy Himmel. What's the science behind cultivating a habit of happiness? What's happening in this brain of mine? The more often I practice those habits over time, right? Like sometimes I play video games and I'm really happy, right? Right. But over time, right? But that's also sort of, or I'm going out for a walk with my family, or I'm spending time with my loved ones, or maybe painting. I just bought a sketch pad today, just because I've been out of touch for the past few months, and I was like, I need to just not focus on work. I just need to draw. So whatever request came my way, hey, Harry, can you tell me? I don't know what it was, but the answer was friendship. So what I did was I drew this thing for my friend, and I just showed it to them. I was like, hey, this is your answer. And they were so happy, because for me, it was my way of doing something that I love to do, which is sketching. So Professor Newman, what happens to me over time if I practice this habit of happiness?
Well, you're exactly right, because we now know that culturing happiness is no different than acquiring any other skill, whether it's playing tennis or art or music or anything that we do. And the reason is that, as you said, our brain cells have thousands of connections to other brain cells. And what happens is the more we do something, the stronger the connection between those brain cells become. And it's sort of like if water is dripping on a stone and it drips and it drips and it creates a groove, that the more that we do something, the stronger the connections are. And they say that cells that wire together, fire together. So it's almost like, dropping a marble on a hill and it just goes right away automatically. It is no difference. And I want to just add one thing that you've given me the opportunity. When Pratika was talking about how 80% of our thoughts are negative, that's actually accurate, because it turns out that the human brain is wired to experience negativity. And this is part of survival. If you're having a picnic and a wild boar comes charging at you, you got to remember, don't go picnicking there again. But if it's just a lovely day in the park with your friends, you're probably not going to remember it a year from now, but you'll definitely remember the boar, because negativity simply makes a larger impression chemically and electrically in the brain. However, that can be changed. That can absolutely be changed. One of my colleagues at Harvard said that the human brain is like Velcro for negativity and Teflon for positivity. But what's been found is that when people practice specific wellness programs, specifically breathing practices and meditation practices, and this is a direct quote, that wiring responsible for negative emotions begins to wither, and that wiring responsible for positivity and happiness seems to grow stronger. So again, it's almost like fake it till you make it, but it's not fake. Just having those experiences. And when Dr. Himmel was talking about gratitude, at the end of the day, just take a few minutes and think of all of the good things that happen, even if it was like, oh, I had a delicious mango today, which happened to me today. Just any one thing like that. And it's not mood making. It's just simply shifting our attention, because as human beings, we have the unique ability to decide what to focus on. And what we focus on changes the wiring in our brain cells. So it is absolutely possible. It is 100% doable to raise our set point of happiness simply by adapting the self-care that we've all been talking about today.
Yeah, and I often, just to piggyback on that, I often say, what you practice, you'll become. So what you want to practice is really affirmations. You want to practice the positive choices that you have. You want to practice the grasping onto what you are grateful for on a regular basis. And as you practice those things, that changes your default setting, because
Yes.
we have this default setting of negativity, you
Yes.
know, as what was described. And so if you really want to change that setting, if you want to change your default setting, you have to practice the opposite of that and make a choice to focus on things like affirmations, gratitude, and positivity.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I will just add one thing to reinforce this, that, so I don't have a great day every day. I mean, let's be real. None of us do. And some days the things that are positive that I can think about, because I do make this a practice every night before I go to bed, is that I list at least 5 things that I'm grateful for. And sometimes, like, the only things that I can think of are, I'm grateful that I have taste buds, because there are people with brain lesions that don't have any taste at all. They can never enjoy ice cream or pizza or fresh mangoes. I'm grateful for being able to see that our universe was created with color, and that I have eyes to see the color. So there's always something that you can find to be grateful for. And again, it's not mood making, it's just a habit, and it's laying down a new habit.
Fake it till you make it. Yeah,
Harry,
maybe
will you teach us a breathing practice now that everybody can take home?
Absolutely. I want to share one story. Pratika, you were mentioning, I think just having this conversation reminded me, a good friend of mine and old time Sky Schools facilitator, Juan Mascara, used to go into this school in Long Island, middle school. And he worked for a long time there. And he recounted, I just remember hearing about it recently again, recounted this story where this young girl in 7th or 8th grade, she, as part of the Sky Schools programs, we have these check-ins with students. Maybe once a month, we round out to each student. There's about 1,000 students in the school. So about once every 2 weeks or once every 3 weeks, we get to every student. And so it turns out this particular girl was cutting herself. And what happened was that she shared this with a colleague of mine, Juan, and Juan was very, he just walked her through the breathing. He's, and she felt really good. She kept yapping away. She loved to talk. So she talked about what's going on at home, a lot of stress with her family, with her siblings. And she would just talk it out. And then Juan would just listen. Juan didn't, he's just doing his job. He's just showing up. He was like, okay, come on, can we do the breathing? Okay. We got to go. I got to see the next student. So he runs her through the breathing. And unknown to him, she comes back next time they had a check-in, right? He does that, maybe he did that for one session. He ran through this victory breath that we'll do right now. And he did this with her. And then the next time she came and she said, she yapped away again. She told him about everything that's all this, these girls are not being so nice to me. And, there's this class drama happening here. And then she shares, and also I stopped cutting myself and I taught my sister the breathing technique, and she stopped cutting herself too. Okay, Mr. Juan, and this happened and that. So it was just like, it was such a, to me, that represents what can happen when I cultivate, a habit of relaxing the nervous system, of what can happen when this happiness thing, when I can transplant happiness, even for a few moments, into my brain and then do it consistently. And she shared that she's been doing it, every day, every night before she goes to bed and every morning when she wakes up. Just this few minutes, 30 seconds to a minute, just to relax and then move about her day. All right. So we'll do this breathing practice called the victory breath. It's very simple. It's in the yogic sciences, it's called Ujjayi. And the simplest way for me to show you is if I whisper and you whisper with me. Yeah, so you ready for an experiment? If you're in the audience and you have a bunch of things going on, if you can put it down for a little bit, for about a minute and a half, maybe you can learn this technique if you haven't before. Well, I'll whisper a sound and you can whisper with me, call and response. Hello. Whisper the sound hello. Hello. Okay, good. Now whisper the sound with the mouth closed. One more time. Good. Now drop the word and continue breathing from that space that's being restricted in the back of the throat. That's so I'm gonna do it loud. See if you can notice it. But I'm breathing from the back of my throat. I'll demonstrate. Could you hear it? Yeah, I'm doing it loud. It doesn't have to be this loud. It's very soft. So let's practice it from the back of the throat. Just breathing in, pulling in with the constriction in the back throat, and breathing out as well. Yeah, breathing in and out with that slight constriction. Even though the air is coming in and out of the nose, my attention is on the back of the throat. So once you feel comfortable, let's do a few. And once you feel comfortable, you can close the eyes and continue on with the victory breath from the back of the throat. Keep breathing, keep the back straight. If you have anything in your hands, you could put it down. Stay with the breath from the back of the throat, very gently, softly breathing from the back of the throat. Keeping the eyes closed, you can come back to normal breathing. Observe the difference between the normal breath and the victory breath. And keeping the eyes closed, let's pick up the breath from the back of the throat once again. Keep breathing again with the victory breath, very softly from the back of the throat, keeping the eyes closed. Keeping the eyes closed, let's come back to normal breathing. Let the breath return to normal. And when you're ready, you can gradually open the eyes. Take your time. Good. Was it easy to follow? Good. So you can use this to go to sleep. Yeah, you can do about 10 of these in bed at night. Yeah. And I know if we're running short on time, but anybody want to share how that was? How does your mind feel? How does your body feel?
You can put it in the chat.
Yeah. All right.
I think that was really nice. I actually do that every morning before I go to school because I think sometimes when you wake up in the morning, you feel like overwhelmed. Do I have all this tests and quizzes at school, or I have this at I have this to tackle the rest of the day. So I think like doing it morning or even before going to bed or throughout the day does help. And then one thing I would also add is I actually learned this in my Sky program. It was when we do any like meditation, if we do it with like a smile, it actually helps a lot. I actually didn't used to do this before the Sky program. I would just have a neutral face, but it's also, we learned in psychology, it's called like the facial feedback. So if you smile, you know, indirectly, you actually do feel happier. So maybe next time, like, you know, for the viewers, if we do any of the exercises, like just do it with a smile. And I think it really helps you feel better as
Mhm.
yeah.
Beautiful. So
Um,
you can, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I was just
No, I was just gonna say for anybody that's watching this, you can do this at night, especially if you don't have to have difficulty falling asleep, but if you do, you can use this right before you go to bed or right as you're laying down in your favorite posture, whether that's laying on your right or your left side. Professor Newman and Dr. Himmel can attest to what's the better, they're the right or the left side to sleep on, which I hear it's the right, but and then you can use this breath when you found your perfect position and just notice what happens. No more than 10 or 15, because after that it's like messing with the circuitry of the body, if I'm not mistaken, Professor Newman, right? The more this you know
It can start to wake
modulating
you
the
up.
breath. Go
It
ahead.
can start to wake you up if you do more than 10
Right.
or 12. So more is not always better.
Mhm. Yeah. And then you can do this in the morning as well to
Yeah.
center yourself, or you need not do it with the eyes closed only. Maybe when you're in a situation that's pushing your buttons, you can switch on to this breath and you might realize that the intensity of the emotion is a little less.
Or even if you're in an exam and you're nervous and you're clutching, if you do this, it will start to calm you down. You know, the first time I spoke at the United Nations, I was so nervous that my heart was thumping that I actually looked down to see if my shirt was moving because I was afraid people would see how nervous I was. And so I started to do this breath. And nobody can tell you're doing it. So it is a great biohack. It is a great biohack. And I see that Ari put a message in the chat that a number of people said that they felt it was calming and relaxing. They felt more settled. So you can do it any time because nobody knows you're doing it, which is really great.
There's another question that's in the chat box, and maybe we can, Dr. Himmel, if you'd like to speak on this. How do we inculcate making happiness a habit in youth, especially during their puberty period, when they have mood swings and hormonal changes?
Yeah, I certainly recognize that. I think adolescence is a time of just a lot of change and transition. And, again, I think it's a developing brain. And so often all of the faculties that might be needed in terms of really having resiliency are in the development stages. So figuring out, I think, what allows you to center, what is your anchor. Certainly breath work is a piece of that allows you to find your anchor. And I think wherever you are, having those tools in your toolbox to be able to utilize when you are hyper aroused or overwhelmed or overstimulated, or when a day is not going well, to be able to pull out those tools when you need them and be able to recenter and just kind of refocus. And it gives you that renewed sense of, I can handle this, because always anxiety is about the idea that something bad is going to happen and I'm not going to be able to handle it. So if you can address that and just kind of get re-anchored and recentered, it will help to just kind of rebalance and stabilize.
Yeah, I think the reason it's called like victory breath is because it makes you feel like, you know, you've accomplished something even before, like if you're nervous about something, it makes you feel better and more confident before walking in. I know it helped with my competition a few weeks back, and it's definitely helped a lot of us. I think Mr. Harry, you talked about one of the most important things he said is like, if we believe we can cultivate happiness, then we really can. If we take that initiative, because before, any program can help us, we have to be willing to help ourselves and, own up to that self-care, because we naturally like incline towards negativity, right? As Dr. Joy said. So, as what you practice, you become. So if we can continue to use these breathing exercises, or, what, Professor Newman said, journaling, what you're grateful about, even if you don't have a good day, if we can find like those little things to be happy about, I think it really, pushes us forward and motivates us, because, if we believe we can be happy, then we really can. So I think that was kind of a takeaway from all three of our panelists. Yeah. So thank you.
There's another question in the chat box. Prithika, do you want to take it? Or do you want to take a shot?
Is it question 2? All right. What are some things teens can do to feel more connected in society and hence feel happier, even if they have online friends and followers? There's an increasing sense of loneliness in youth. So I think what it says is feel more connected in society and feel happier. I think that one of the most important things is even those kids who do have social media or they do utilize it, I think having a limit to that, because sometimes we tend to think, what I talked about, it's like artificial universe, like that's our friends. And I think if we go out and get to connect with people, talk to people about it, I think that's more impactful, right? Talking to people is more fun than texting them, or I think that's really a way to be more connected in society. And even what I sometimes like to do is when I'm stressed, I have a lot of things the next day. I like to, what Professor Newman said about exercise, it's not even a full workout. I just go for a walk, even if it's I think once it was 30 degrees Fahrenheit. I just still went for a walk, and I think it feels better. It was, there was no scenery. It was dark at night. It was nothing to look around, but it just, being out in the fresh air just makes you feel more connected. And if you have a lot of things at hand, you come back and sit, you can really focus better, because, those 3 things, your diet, your exercise, and breathing. I think those 3 really summarize it well. And if we can implement that, I think especially as youth, sometimes we have a lot of things going on. I think it's easier if you just take out 5 minutes. I know sometimes, before I was in the Sky program, I would think that, oh, I'm too busy for this, even though I really wasn't. But I think if we take out, it doesn't even take that long, 5 minutes to do a breathing exercise, 2 minutes, 5-minute, 10-minute walk. I think it can make a big difference. That's how we feel more connected. If we go out and do something that makes us feel happier, that helps us connect with the people around us. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, it is the issue of loneliness, I think, is really an important piece. And I think we're starting to study it a little bit more, perhaps, than even what we were before, because it is a crucial element in terms of just our sense of well-being and certainly how we perceive our sense of happiness. So when there is aloneness, you feel isolated, you feel alone, you feel like you don't belong. And those are all really impediments, I think, impediments to happiness. And so figuring out what you need to do in order to connect with others, and not just a superficial kind of connection, but really more of an intimate kind of a sharing type connection with others. So finding others that have common interests in you as you, or common hobbies, or just kind of move in the same circles, and really engaging a little bit more intently, I think, is an important piece that we all, I think, are challenged to keep doing and do more of.
We are actually wired as a species to connect with other people. We don't do well in isolation, and neither do our brains, by the way. Your brains will work better when there's a sense of connection. And Dr. Himmel hit it right on the head that, not just a surfacey connection, but find something that's meaningful for you. Like one of the things that I do is I live in Florida by the ocean. And so when I have a day off and I go to the ocean, I bring up an empty bag and I pick up trash on the ocean as my way of giving back. And I cannot tell you how many people have come up to me and started conversations. And I've developed some wonderful friendships just by picking up garbage and somebody's saying, good for you. And we start a conversation. And there's a side benefit to doing something like that as well. And that is that as a species, we're wired to help each other and to be of service. And when we perform altruistic behavior, whether it's picking up trash on the beach or helping an old lady cross the street, it actually stimulates the pleasure centers in the brain, the same area that's stimulated by cocaine. So we can't help but feel better and more connected to the whole world when we do something of value. So again, whether it's planting a garden, for butterflies, or picking up trash, or, reading to the elderly, whatever it is that feels meaningful to you, it will be so gratifying. And have the courage, as Dr. Himmel was saying, we're concerned about other people's opinions. Who cares if somebody doesn't like what we're doing or thinks what we're doing is not very hip? I mean, if we get upset that they thought we were not cool, who loses sleep? They're sleeping like a baby and we're tossing it. How did they say that to us? Why did they do that? So it's really a great tool for happiness, is to recognize that opinions are like belly buttons. Everybody's got one, and nobody's belly button is any more valuable than anybody else's.
Well said. Well said. Amazing jobs, everyone. Fantastic information. I know this will resonate with thousands and thousands of people that'll end up seeing this recording after the broadcast. I want to thank you all on behalf of Sky Youth Programs for joining us today and sharing your wisdom and bright energy. It's been wonderful sharing this time with you. And for everyone viewing at home and listening to this, please subscribe to us. We have more content similar to this that we'll be producing on a regular basis. And if you have any suggestions, including any speakers or topics, feel free to add that to the chat and we'll deeply take it into consideration. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ari. Yeah. Thank you, Ari.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
Doc.
everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Pleasant dreams. May you sleep like a baby.